AITA for refusing to lend my childhood home to my brother for his wedding despite family pressure. I, 32F, grew up in a very tight-knit family. And for most of my life, my parents lived in the same house in a small town in the Midwest. About 10 years ago, after college, I moved out for work and ended up buying my own apartment in a city a few hours away. Shortly after that, my parents decided to downsize and sold the house to me. I was thrilled because it had a lot of sentimental value, and I had plans to renovate it and maybe even eventually move back. Fast forward to now. My brother, Jake, 29M, got engaged a few months ago, and as soon as he announced it, he made it clear he wanted to have the wedding at our childhood home. He said it would mean a lot to my parents and to the family as a whole. I told him I appreciated the sentiment, but that I wasn't comfortable lending the house for such a big event. It's an old house, and while I have done some renovations, it's still not in the best condition to host a wedding. There are structural concerns in the basement. The floors are easily scratched, and I'm worried about liability if anything were to happen to the guests or the house itself. Jake reacted with shock and anger. He told me I was being selfish and that I was ruining the family's memories by refusing to let them use the house. My parents, when I talked to them, were disappointed as well. They said I should think of the family first, and that weddings only happen once, so it would be a shame if the house wasn't part of it. I tried explaining that it wasn't a matter of sentimentality for me, but practical concerns and insurance issues. I also mentioned that the house is now mine and that I need to maintain it in a way that keeps it safe and functional for me in the future. I offered alternatives. I suggested that Jake could have the ceremony in the backyard park nearby, which has a gazebo and plenty of space, or that he could rent a hall and decorate it with photos from the house to evoke nostalgia. He refused both options. He said that no rented space could replace the magic of growing up in that house. He also tried to pressure me by bringing up my parents' feelings again, saying they would be hurt if the wedding didn't happen there. I explained that I could not put my home at risk for a single event, even if it meant disappointing people. The tension escalated when my extended family got involved. My aunt and cousin started messaging me, saying that I was being unreasonable and that weddings are a time to set aside personal concerns for family happiness. They kept emphasizing how I was holding the house hostage and putting rules above love and family. I began to feel cornered, as if everyone was against me for simply saying no. A few weeks ago, Jake tried a different tactic. He said he was willing to pay me for the use of the house, which I found insulting. Money wasn't the issue. The issue was that I didn't want to risk damage to my home and didn't feel comfortable hosting a large event there. I tried to explain that accepting money wouldn't solve my concerns. He accused me of being greedy, and my parents seemed disappointed that I wouldn't let the family celebrate together in the house we all love. In the meantime, I've been doing some research about hosting events in private homes. Liability insurance for weddings is expensive, and even then, some coverage doesn't protect against accidental damage to the property itself. On top of that, I have my own commitments and responsibilities in my life that make organizing and supervising such a large event challenging. I would basically have to take months off work, supervise contractors, and handle vendors, all on top of my regular life. It's exhausting just thinking about it, and it feels unfair that the responsibility would fall entirely on me just because I own the house now. Recently, the family confrontation got worse. Jake sent me a long message listing all the memories we had in the house, holidays, birthday parties, and even family fights. He said it would be selfish to deny everyone a chance to make new memories there. I responded that while I valued those memories too, the house is a living space, not a venue, and I can't put it at risk for a one-time event. I also reminded him that owning the house doesn't mean it's an obligation to host weddings. I'm beginning to feel isolated. Some family members now call me stubborn and cold, and my parents haven't visited me in months because they are upset. Jake has started hinting that he might not invite me to the wedding if I don't relent, which feels manipulative and hurtful. I don't want to ruin our relationship, but I also don't want to compromise my safety and comfort. I can see where they're coming from emotionally. The house does hold a lot of sentimental value, but I feel like my boundaries are being completely disregarded. I don't want to be painted as the villain in my family just because I'm prioritizing my home and personal well-being. So, AITA for refusing to lend my childhood home for my brother's wedding even though it upsets my family. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious. When do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé plan my wedding because I feel he's overstepping. I, 28F, have been engaged to my partner, Mark, 30M, for almost a year. We've been together for 6 years, and we've always been very close. Our relationship is healthy, loving, and balanced. We've been planning our wedding slowly, trying to make it something personal and meaningful rather than just a flashy event. We agreed on a venue about 6 months ago, and since then, I've been working on the details with Mark. Everything from the flowers to the seating chart to the playlist. Here's where the problem started. My younger sister, Emily, 25F, recently got engaged to her fiancé, Ryan, 27M. Ryan is a really outgoing guy, very confident, and he loves taking charge of things. He's also someone who tends to think he knows what's best, even when people haven't asked for his input. Before Mark and I even sent out our save the dates, Ryan started messaging me, giving advice about our wedding. At first, it was little things like suggesting I consider different photographers or recommending a DJ he knows. I politely thanked him and said we were happy with our choices, but he didn't stop. The next stage was when Ryan started making more direct suggestions. He sent me a long email about wedding logistics, including ideas for the ceremony, seating, and even a budget breakdown he thought we should follow. He framed it as helpful, but it felt controlling. I responded firmly, telling him that Mark and I had already made our decisions and appreciated his concern, but we didn't need him to take over. Ryan's response was that I was overreacting and that he just wanted to make sure our day was perfect. He even suggested he could come in and help with planning because he's really good at organizing events. This is where I drew the line. I told him clearly that I did not want him involved in planning our wedding at all. I said it politely but firmly. He reacted badly, claiming that I was being ungrateful and rude, and that since he was my sister's fiancé, he should have some say. Emily has been caught in the middle. She told me that Ryan just wants to help and that I'm being too defensive, and she suggested I compromise by letting him handle small things like writing her ceremony program or helping with invites. I told Emily I appreciate the sentiment, but no, I'm not comfortable letting someone who wasn't even part of our initial discussions take control of any part of the planning. Things escalated when Ryan started posting on social media, tagging me and Mark in posts about tips for planning your big day, and comments like, "Can't believe you're stressing about such minor things, we got this." It felt passive-aggressive and invasive. I asked him to stop tagging us and to respect our boundaries, and he claimed I was being mean and that weddings are family affairs, implying that he should have more influence. At this point, I reached out to Emily to set clear boundaries. I explained that I love her, I'm excited for her wedding next year, and I want to be involved in her planning and celebrations. But for my own wedding, Mark and I are the decision makers, and no one else should try to override our choices. Emily said she understands, but warned that Ryan might escalate further. Last week, Ryan sent me a list of vendors he thinks we should hire, with detailed reasons why he thinks our selections are terrible choices. He even included price comparisons, suggesting we switch venues and caterers to save money, claiming it would be more efficient. I responded politely again, saying we appreciate the suggestions, but we are sticking with our vendors and budget. He didn't reply. However, Emily confronted me yesterday, asking if I'm trying to start a fight with Ryan and suggesting I should just let him help. It's easier that way. I told her I am not trying to start a fight. I'm simply asserting my boundaries. I explained that Mark and I have been planning this wedding together for months, and it's important that our decisions are respected. She seemed frustrated, and I think she feels caught between us. I'm worried I might be overreacting or being unreasonable. My sister and her fiancé are close to me, and I want to maintain a good relationship with them, but I also feel that my wedding is not their project to manage. I've tried setting boundaries multiple times, but Ryan continues to push, and Emily is subtly encouraging him. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé have any involvement in planning my wedding? I feel like I'm standing up for myself and for Mark, but I also don't want to hurt my relationship with my sister. I should add that our families are very close, and we've all spent a lot of time together over the years. This is not about excluding Emily. She's more than welcome to help and celebrate. But Ryan has no direct connection to our planning process other than being her fiancé, and I feel like he's overstepping. I've considered sending a joint message to Emily and Ryan to firmly establish that while we love and respect them, the wedding planning is strictly ours. I just want to know if I'm being too harsh or if I'm right to insist on controlling my own wedding. Has anyone been through something similar? I feel like saying no repeatedly should be enough, but Ryan doesn't seem to get it, and I don't want this tension to ruin my sisterly relationship. In short, Mark and I want a wedding that reflects us, and while I love my sister and her fiancé, I don't want him involved in the planning. AITA for standing my ground? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé? I, 28F, have a sister, Emily, 32F, who I used to be very close with. Growing up, we were inseparable, sharing clothes, secrets, and even the same group of friends. After college, life naturally pulled us in different directions, but I always try to maintain our closeness. Emily met Mark about 3 years ago, and at first, I was happy for her. He seemed charming and funny, and I genuinely wanted her to be happy. Over time, however, I began noticing things that made me uncomfortable. Mark is manipulative, passive-aggressive, and dismissive of Emily's feelings. At first, I thought I was overreacting or being too critical because he was her partner, but it became increasingly hard to ignore. Whenever Emily would express a desire to do something independent or pursue a hobby, Mark would subtly belittle her or guilt her into staying home with him. He often makes sarcastic jokes at her expense in front of family, and she laughs along nervously. During holidays and family gatherings, he monopolizes conversations, interrupts her, and rarely acknowledges her accomplishments. Emily brushes it off, saying that it's just his sense of humor, but I started to see patterns of emotional manipulation that deeply concerned me. Last year, Emily announced their engagement. Everyone in the family was excited, but I couldn't shake my unease. I tried talking to Emily about my concerns, but she dismissed them. I didn't want to be labeled as the jealous sister or ruin her happiness, so I mostly kept my opinions to myself. When she started discussing wedding plans, I initially offered to help with the planning. That's when things started to get tense. Mark began controlling aspects of the wedding, demanding certain decorations, guest lists, and even what food was served. Whenever I tried to make suggestions or offer help, he would respond in ways that were dismissive or subtly condescending, sometimes directly telling me my ideas were not practical or not his style. I tried to remain diplomatic, but it was frustrating. The breaking point happened 2 months ago during a family dinner. Emily and Mark invited us over, and I noticed that Mark spent most of the evening criticizing Emily in front of everyone. He made comments about her career, how she handles money, and even the way she dresses. Emily laughed nervously each time, and nobody said anything. When I tried to defend her or change the subject, Mark snapped at me, saying, "Why are you always trying to turn this into a drama? She's fine, just relax." I felt humiliated and angry. I left early that night, and Emily called me crying, telling me I overreacted. I tried to explain that his behavior was manipulative and hurtful, but she said I was being judgmental and should support her no matter what. Over the next few weeks, the wedding planning became even more controlling. Mark insisted on handling all communication with vendors, seating arrangements, and even the guest list, despite Emily saying she wanted a traditional wedding where family input mattered. Every time Emily tried to assert herself, Mark would get upset or guilt-trip her, and I watched helplessly as my sister seemed to shrink under his influence. I expressed my concern to Emily once more, emphasizing that I wasn't trying to sabotage her wedding, but that I couldn't ignore Mark's behavior and would be uncomfortable attending if things continued the way they were. She became upset and told me that if I couldn't be there, I was effectively choosing him over her. This devastated me because that was never my intention. I love my sister, and I want to support her, but I also felt like attending would implicitly condone the way Mark treats her. A few weeks ago, Emily formally asked me if I would be part of the wedding party. I told her that I appreciated the offer, but I couldn't participate given my feelings about Mark and the way he treats her. I explained that my decision came from a place of concern for her or not, jealousy or selfishness. Emily became extremely upset, accusing me of being unsupportive and trying to make her wedding about me. She said she couldn't believe I would let my dislike of her fiancé interfere with our relationship, and asked if I intended to attend the ceremony at all. I was honest and told her that I probably wouldn't, at least not in person, because I didn't feel comfortable being around him in such an intimate setting. She was furious, and our mother called me, pleading with me to reconsider, saying that family comes first and that Emily deserves her sister's support on the biggest day of her life. I understand where my mother's coming from, but I also can't ignore the fact that Emily seems to be stuck in a pattern with Mark that is harmful, and being present would feel disingenuous and painful. Now, other family members are getting involved. My aunt said that I was overreacting and that I should grow up and support my sister's choice. My cousin told me that I'm being dramatic and that this is just wedding stress. Even some of Emily's friends have subtly hinted that I should get over it because it's her special day. I feel isolated, and while I want to be there for Emily, I also feel that my boundaries are valid. I can't in good conscience celebrate someone who continuously undermines my sister and treats her poorly. I've tried to think of compromises, like attending only the ceremony, avoiding direct interaction with Mark, or sending a gift and a heartfelt note, but Emily has made it clear that she wants me fully present and involved. I feel trapped between maintaining my own mental health and preserving my relationship with my sister. I don't want to regret missing her wedding, but I also don't want to feel complicit in condoning a relationship that I believe is harmful. I've spoken to a few friends about this, and the opinions are split. Some say I should put aside my discomfort for a day and support my sister, while others say that setting boundaries is reasonable given the circumstances. I've tried to explain my position calmly and with love, but Emily is very hurt and feels betrayed. Our communication has broken down, and I haven't spoken to her in over a week. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé. I feel like I'm protecting my sister and myself, but my family sees it as me being selfish and unsupportive. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after a decade-long family feud. I, 34F, come from a family that has always been, let's say, complicated. My younger sister, Emily, 29F, and I have had our fair share of disagreements over the years, but things escalated about 10 years ago in a way that neither of us expected. At the time, I was 24 and had just finished college. Emily was 19, in her second year of university, and we were living in the same city. The problem began with a shared inheritance issue. Our grandmother had passed away, leaving behind a substantial amount of money and a property in the countryside that she had bought years earlier. She had expressed in her will that both of us were to receive equal shares, but she had also made some vague statements about the property being a place for the family to gather and make memories. At the time, I interpreted that as her wanting us to eventually co-own the house if we decided to use it, while Emily's interpretation, as she later admitted, was that she should take the property immediately. After her passing, our family gathered to divide the estate. Emily's parents, our mom and stepdad, sided heavily with her, arguing that she was younger, lived further away, and needed the property more than I did. I felt blindsided. I had spent years saving money and planning for a future where I could afford a small house of my own, and suddenly it felt like my rightful share was being manipulated. Emily, at the time, didn't seem aware of the tension she was causing. She was thrilled at the idea of having the property. Negotiations went poorly. I tried to propose splitting the property in a way that would allow both of us to benefit, even suggesting renting it out and sharing the income. Emily refused outright, saying she wanted full ownership and didn't trust me to be responsible with it. The argument escalated into what I can only describe as a public shouting match at my grandmother's funeral. My mom accused me of being selfish. Emily cried, and call me heartless, and my dad, who had passed away years earlier, but whose presence was still felt in our family dynamics, was mentioned a lot in accusations about favoritism. I eventually walked out, furious and hurt, vowing not to speak to Emily for a long time. Years passed. Our contact was sporadic at best, holiday cards, occasional texts about general life updates, and nothing more. About 3 years ago, Emily got engaged to a man named Kevin, who I've met once. She invited me to the wedding, but I declined. I didn't feel ready to be around her after the property dispute, and honestly, the idea of pretending everything was okay felt exhausting. Recently, Emily's wedding plans became more elaborate. She's having a destination wedding in Italy, which is well beyond what I could afford, and she asked my parents to pressure me into attending. They claim it's just a wedding, not a negotiation, and that I should put aside past conflict for one day. I tried explaining that attending felt emotionally unsafe. I told them that I couldn't just switch off a decade of unresolved hurt because of a wedding invitation. They accused me of being dramatic, selfish, and holding grudges. My father's brother, who I'm fairly close to, sided with me, saying that family reconciliation shouldn't be forced. The conflict escalated when Emily sent me a personal message pleading with me to come. She wrote that it would mean so much to her to have me there, that it was her biggest day ever, and that she wanted her sister standing beside her. She also mentioned that she would never bring up the inheritance thing again, and that she was willing to forgive. I read the message several times, feeling conflicted. On one hand, I want to have some connection with her again. On the other hand, the memory of the arguments, the public humiliation, and the lack of acknowledgement for how hurt I was keeps me from feeling safe or ready to reconcile. I responded honestly, saying that I couldn't attend the wedding, that I appreciated her apology, but that 10 years of tension isn't something I can just erase. I suggested that we start rebuilding our relationship slowly, maybe through occasional phone calls or visits at neutral locations. Emily didn't respond immediately, which was unlike her. A few days later, she called our mom and accused me of ruining her special day and being petty. My mom called me, crying, saying I was breaking the family apart and that I should just go to Italy to make peace. I've stood firm. I've been called cold, resentful, and unloving by several relatives. I understand that this seems extreme from the outside, but from my perspective, this isn't about a wedding. It's about a decade of unresolved issues, broken trust, and a feeling that my feelings were never fully respected or acknowledged. I don't want to be part of an event where I might be forced to smile and pretend everything is fine, while internally, I'm still processing years of emotional hurt. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after a long-standing family feud, even though she's reached out and asked for my presence? Since writing this, I've considered reaching out to a therapist to help navigate the family dynamics and possibly draft a letter that expresses my willingness to reconcile on my own terms. But the family pressure is intense, and everyone keeps insisting that weddings are sacred and that I should just make it work. I genuinely want some relationship with Emily again, but I also want it to be healthy and mutual, not forced. I feel like I'm caught between wanting to respect my own boundaries and being painted as the villain. My friends mostly support my stance, but I can't shake the guilt from the constant family pressure. Has anyone dealt with a situation where attending a family event felt impossible, yet they still wanted to rebuild relationships? I want to do the right thing, but I don't want to lose myself in the process. AITA for refusing to let my sister move back in after she got divorced. I, 34 am, have always been very independent and have a strong sense of personal boundaries when it comes to my living space. I own a modest 2-bedroom apartment in a bustling city, which I share with my girlfriend, Mia, 32F, and our cat, Jasper. Our relationship has always been very communicative, and we take care to make sure both of us feel comfortable and respected in our home. My sister, Lauren, 30F, has always had a turbulent life when it comes to relationships. She married young, right after college, and although her marriage was often rocky, I tried to support her in any way I could. About a month ago, she called me in the middle of the night, crying, telling me that her husband had left her for someone else and that she was completely broke. She said she didn't have anywhere to go because their apartment lease was in her husband's name, and her friends were too busy to take her in. I felt sympathy for her situation, obviously. I also understood the need for a safe space immediately after something like a divorce. However, I immediately knew that her staying with me would be complicated. My apartment is small, we barely have room for our own things, and Lauren has a very, let's say, high-maintenance personality. She is extremely critical, talks nonstop about her problems, and has a very controlling nature, which has caused friction between her and our parents over the years. I explained to her that while I wanted to help, I didn't feel comfortable having her move in permanently. I offered to help her find temporary accommodations, like a short-term Airbnb, or I could lend her some money to secure a small studio nearby. I also offered to spend time with her daily, so she didn't feel lonely, and I could help her look for jobs and housing. I thought this was a fair compromise. Lauren did not take it well. She started crying on the phone, saying that I was abandoning her in her moment of need, and that she always thought I was the reliable sibling. She said I was being selfish for prioritizing my girlfriend and our cat over her. I tried explaining that this wasn't about choosing Mia or Jasper over her, but rather about respecting our living situation and maintaining boundaries for everyone's well-being, including hers. The next day, she sent me a long text detailing all the sacrifices I had made in my life and implying that I owed her this one thing. She accused me of being cold and unloving, and that I was letting her down when she needed me most. I felt like the more I tried to explain, the worse the situation got. I kept reiterating my offer to help her financially, help her pack, and spend time with her, but she refused to accept it. Things escalated when Lauren showed up at my apartment unannounced. I was at work, but Mia was home. She tried to convince Mia that she should let Lauren stay just for a few weeks, claiming it would be temporary and harmless. Mia told her firmly that she couldn't just barge in and impose herself on our home. Lauren left angrily, but not before leaving passive-aggressive notes on the door, such as, "I guess family doesn't mean anything to you," and "I thought you'd be there for me." After this, Lauren started messaging me constantly, sometimes multiple times a day, asking when she could move in, complaining that I was ignoring her, and occasionally threatening to show up at my apartment again. I blocked her on social media temporarily and set firm boundaries via text. No unannounced visits, no harassment, and no guilt tripping. I explained again that I loved her and wanted to help, but I could not have her living in my apartment. The family got involved at this point. Our parents sided with Lauren, saying that I should help my sister in her hour of need, and that I was being too rigid. They reminded me that when I went through a difficult breakup a few years ago, my parents had been there for me and offered their homes, suggesting I should reciprocate. I tried to explain that my situation was different because my living space is much smaller and I share it with a partner and a pet who have their own needs. They told me I was overthinking it and that family should come first. The situation has now reached a boiling point. Lauren has refused all other help and keeps insisting that I am morally obligated to let her move in. My parents are subtly pressuring Mia, too, which has created tension in our relationship. Mia is very supportive of me and agrees that having Lauren move in would create constant stress and tension, but she's upset that my parents are trying to guilt us both. I feel trapped between helping my sister in a way that I can manage and maintaining my own home and mental well-being. I also feel frustrated that my parents don't seem to understand that helping someone doesn't always have to mean letting them live in your apartment. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to let my sister move in with me after her divorce. Even though my parents and she think I should, I genuinely want to help her in every way I can that doesn't compromise my relationship, home, and mental health, but it's been painted as me being heartless and selfish. I'm really struggling to figure out what the right balance is here. My sister is hurting, but I also have a life and responsibilities that I cannot simply set aside. Has anyone dealt with a similar situation, and how did you navigate it without completely alienating family? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after what happened with her fiancé? So, this is going to be a bit long, and I really need to get it off my chest because I can't stop thinking about this, and I genuinely don't know if I'm overreacting or if I'm in the right here. A little background. I, 27F, am very close with my family, particularly my sister, 29F. We grew up in a household where our parents were very hands-off emotionally, so my sister and I relied on each other a lot. She's always been the more glamorous one, popular, outgoing, and extremely social. I've always been more introverted, content with a smaller circle, and sometimes felt overshadowed by her. Still, we've always had a strong bond. About 6 months ago, my sister got engaged to her boyfriend. Let's call him Matt, 32M. Matt seemed fine at first. He's charming, sociable, and successful, and honestly, I could see why my sister liked him. But over time, I started noticing small things that didn't sit right with me. The first red flag for me was how dismissive he was toward my opinions. For example, we were discussing wedding planning, and I suggested a few ideas for the guest list and venues. Matt immediately shot them down in a sarcastic way, implying they were cheap or boring. My sister laughed it off, saying he was joking, but it didn't feel like a joke. It felt belittling. Then came the first real incident that made me uncomfortable. My sister asked me to help with choosing bridesmaids' dresses. I know nothing about fashion, but I tried to offer my input anyway. Matt barged into the discussion and said, "Why are we even asking for advice from someone who clearly has no taste?" Again, my sister shrugged it off, but I left feeling humiliated. Things escalated in ways I didn't expect. Over the months, Matt began doing what I can only describe as subtle gaslighting and controlling behavior. He would insist on being part of every conversation regarding wedding planning, often overriding my sister's decisions or questioning her memory about things she had already decided. One example, my sister picked a venue months ago and had everything booked. One evening, Matt suddenly told her she had double-booked the location, and she began to panic. I checked the confirmation emails, and she was correct. Matt had made a mistake and then tried to make her doubt herself. I confronted my sister about this once, very gently, and she got defensive, saying, "You're seeing things that aren't there. Matt isn't controlling. He's just involved." I tried to drop it, but it continued. Then came the tipping point. About a month ago, my sister and I were having lunch, and she mentioned that Matt didn't want our parents to be involved in some of the wedding planning because he felt they were overbearing and might ruin the vibe. This, by itself, isn't shocking, but the way he framed it was extremely manipulative. He said that my sister should cut off communication with them regarding planning. My sister didn't outright agree, but she seemed swayed by his words. I tried to express my concern, reminding her that family support is important, especially in stressful times like a wedding. Matt overheard part of our conversation and later confronted me in a very aggressive way. He said I was being toxic for influencing my sister and that if I didn't stop, he would ask her to limit my involvement in her wedding. I was shocked. I've always tried to support my sister, and suddenly I was being framed as the villain. I told him calmly that I had no intention of being toxic and that I just wanted my sister to feel supported by her family. But he doubled down, saying things like, "You don't understand her like I do. Step back, or I'll make her see your attitude for what is." After that confrontation, I started noticing more subtle but consistent ways he tried to isolate her. For instance, he would comment on how much she talks to me, or suggest that I was jealous, or trying to control her, which is literally the opposite of the truth. He even made jokes in front of other family members implying that I was clingy and overly involved, which was humiliating because it painted me in a negative light in front of everyone. So here's where I'm at now. The wedding is in 3 weeks, and I have told my sister I cannot attend. I wrote her a heartfelt message explaining why, that I feel uncomfortable with how Matt treats me and with the way he manipulates her. I emphasize that I love her and want her to be happy, but I cannot in good conscience put myself in an environment where I feel attacked and belittled. Her reaction was extreme. She called me a week later, yelling, crying, and saying I was selfish and trying to ruin her special day. She said that she expected her sister to be there for her, no matter what, and accused me of letting Matt brainwash me. I try to stay calm and repeat that I love her and am worried about how he treats both of us, but she just ended the call in tears. Our parents are upset too. They told me I'm being dramatic and that weddings are stressful for everyone, and I need to get over it. They think I'm blowing things out of proportion, and even some extended family members have started asking me why I'm not attending, which is putting me in an awkward position. Here's the thing. I genuinely feel like I'm protecting myself and trying to set boundaries. I've seen people in similar situations where family members are sidelined or bullied into silence, and I don't want that to happen to me, or make it worse for my sister by being passive. But at the same time, I feel guilty because it's her wedding and everyone keeps saying I'm being selfish. I don't know if I'm wrong here. Am I overreacting for refusing to attend a wedding because of someone else's behavior? Should I put myself through this for the sake of appearances and family expectations? Or am I justified in trying to protect myself from toxic behavior, even if it means missing one of the most important days in my sister's life? I'm emotionally torn because I love my sister and I don't want to lose her relationship entirely over this. But I also can't let someone manipulate and belittle me without consequences. So AITA for refusing to let my brother move in with me after he lost his job? So, here's the situation. I, 32F, live in a 2-bedroom apartment in a mid-sized city, and I've been renting it for about 4 years. I've worked hard to get to a point where I'm financially comfortable. I'm not rich by any means, but I have some savings, a stable job in marketing, and I'm able to pay all my bills and have a little left over to do things I enjoy, like traveling and going out with friends. My brother, Jake, 29M, on the other hand, has always struggled financially. He's had a series of short-term jobs that never lasted, mostly in retail and food service. He's also had a tendency to spend impulsively and isn't great at budgeting. A couple of weeks ago, Jake called me out of the blue. He had just been laid off from his latest job, and apparently, his apartment lease was ending at the same time. He sounded desperate, and after a bit of pleading, he asked if he could move in with me until he got back on his feet. I told him I needed to think about it, but my immediate reaction was no. Here's why. First, my apartment is not that big. I have my own bedroom, a living room, a small kitchen, and 1 bathroom. If he moved in, I would basically be giving up my living room for a makeshift bedroom arrangement. Because he can't sleep on the couch long term, it would be bad for his back, and the space is already cramped. Second, I value my independence. Living alone has been something I've worked hard to achieve, and I don't want to compromise the peace I have in my own home. I told Jake I would help him in other ways, though. I offered to help him look for jobs, to proofread his resume, and even to give him a small financial contribution for a month to cover essentials while he got back on his feet. He didn't take that well. He got angry and said I was being selfish, that family is supposed to help each other, and that I should be ashamed for turning him away when he had nowhere else to go. I tried to explain my perspective calmly. I told him that I'm more than willing to help him, but living together would be a huge stressor for me and would negatively affect both of us. I reminded him of past situations where he had stayed with friends temporarily and it caused tension or awkwardness. I also pointed out that he tends to be messy and disorganized, which clashes with how I like to maintain my space. He didn't acknowledge any of this and accused me of putting my comfort above my family. After that conversation, we haven't spoken much. Our parents called me and asked me to reconsider, saying I should make sacrifices for my brother because family comes first. I told him that I love Jake and want to support him in any way I can, but having him move in is not something I can do without compromising my well-being. My parents got a bit upset and implied I was being too rigid and not compassionate enough. Now, I feel torn. On one hand, I know I'm not obligated to let anyone live in my space, even family. On the other hand, Jake is in a tough spot, and I worry that I might be seen as heartless. I have suggested alternative arrangements, like helping him find a cheaper short-term rental, contributing to part of a hotel or Airbnb stay for a few weeks, or assisting him in finding roommates. But he seems to think those are not good enough because they aren't as convenient as moving in with me. I should also note that I've lived with roommates in the past, and it was always stressful. I have social anxiety to some extent, and having someone else around all the time, even a family member, can be emotionally exhausting. I also work from home several days a week, so having another person in the apartment would interfere with my work routine and productivity. In addition, I've had friends who have moved in with family temporarily, and it often led to tension and resentment. I don't want to risk damaging my relationship with Jake by forcing us into a living situation that we're both not comfortable with. I think that supporting someone doesn't always mean opening up your home. Sometimes it's about giving resources, advice, and helping them become independent again. My brother keeps messaging me, alternating between guilt-tripping and begging. I feel guilty sometimes, but I also know that giving in might make the situation worse for both of us. I've had friends and coworkers weigh in, and their opinions are mixed. Some say I should let him stay temporarily and set clear rules, while others agree with me that it's not my responsibility to house him. I want to support Jake without compromising my life. I offer to help him financially in a limited way and to actively help him search for jobs, but he sees it as insufficient. I've even offered to drive him to interviews, help him set up applications online, and network through my connections. He brushed all of this off, insisting that he needs a roof over his head immediately. I'm sharing this because I'm wondering if I am the asshole for saying no to him. I genuinely don't want to hurt him, but I also can't sacrifice my mental health, work situation, and personal space. I feel like there's a middle ground, but Jake and even some family members don't seem to see it that way. So, AITA for refusing to let my brother move in with me after he lost his job, even though I'm trying to support him in other ways. Character count, 6,347. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she excluded me from the planning process. I, 29F, have always had a complicated relationship with my younger sister, Emma, 27F. We were close as kids, but as we grew older, our personalities and life choices diverged significantly. I've always been more introverted, focused on my career and software development, while Emma is extremely outgoing and has a large social circle. Despite our differences, I've always tried to support her. I've been there for every milestone: her first apartment, her first job out of college, her move across the country, and countless personal crises. Recently, Emma got engaged to her long-term boyfriend, Alex, 28M. Initially, I was genuinely excited for her. I thought this would be a chance for us to reconnect, even though she and Alex have a very different lifestyle from mine. Emma announced that she wanted a very small, intimate wedding, just family and close friends. I was a bit disappointed because our family is large and she tends to be very inclusive, but I respected her wishes and told her I'd support her however I could. The trouble started when Emma began wedding planning. She and Alex decided to plan everything themselves without any input from the family. This included not just the usual decor or catering choices, but major decisions like the guest list, venue, and even seating arrangements. Normally, I wouldn't mind this, but Emma specifically excluded me from any communication. I learned about appointments and decisions only after they were finalized. I tried to express my feelings politely, saying I wanted to be involved in some small way, perhaps helping with table arrangements or picking out music, but she brushed it off. She said she wanted the day to reflect her and Alex, not anyone else, and that including me would complicate things. I initially accepted this, but then the issues escalated. One day, I received a group chat message meant for the wedding party that included Emma, Alex, and a few friends. In the chat, Emma and Alex discussed that they intentionally did not want me in the bridal party or even at the rehearsal dinner because they felt I was too critical and overly analytical, and it would ruin the fun vibe. I was shocked and hurt because I've never been controlling of their decisions, and I've always tried to be supportive. I confronted Emma privately about the message. She admitted it was true and said she didn't want me there to avoid stress or disagreements. She claimed that Alex also didn't want me involved and that I should understand that this was their day. I explained that I wasn't looking to control anything. I just wanted to be part of her special day in a meaningful way, like helping organize small details, supporting her emotionally, or even just attending events leading up to the wedding. Emma remained firm, saying that my presence and planning would overshadow the joy and that she felt better keeping me out entirely. At this point, I was hurt but still willing to compromise. I offered to attend only the wedding ceremony itself and skip the rehearsal dinner and pre-wedding events. I also offered to quietly help behind the scenes if she needed me for anything practical. Emma rejected all of this, saying that my selective participation would create awkwardness and that they preferred I not attend at all. I spoke to my parents about this. They were split. My mom said I should respect Emma's wishes and attend graciously, while my dad agreed that Emma's exclusion felt extreme and emotionally hurtful. I also reached out to a few close friends for advice, and most of them said that completely cutting me out of her wedding was excessive, especially since we're sisters. They suggested I write Emma a heartfelt letter explaining my feelings and setting boundaries, but making it clear I wouldn't create drama. I did that. In my letter, I explained that I loved her and wanted to support her, that I understood it was her and Alex's day, but that I felt completely shut out and that being forced into total exclusion was painful. I offered once more to attend in a limited capacity, making it clear I wouldn't interfere. Emma responded with a very curt message saying that she appreciated my concern, but that her mind was made up and that she did not want me involved in any way, including the ceremony. At this point, I made the difficult decision to decline attending the wedding entirely. I sent a message explaining that I loved her and that I hoped the day was beautiful, but I couldn't be part of something that made me feel entirely excluded and unwelcome. Since then, family tensions have been intense. Emma posted photos and stories from the wedding without me, and she made subtle comments about keeping things simple and stress-free in ways that felt directed at me. My parents are upset, saying I should have gone even if I felt hurt, while some extended family members are sympathetic. A few mutual friends have reached out expressing shock that I wasn't included, which has only amplified my sense of alienation. I don't know if I overreacted. I love my sister and would never want to harm her happiness, but being completely excluded from planning, the rehearsal, and even the ceremony itself feels like rejection, not respect. I also worry that declining attendance will damage our relationship permanently. I've tried to compromise multiple times and even offered a neutral, supportive role, but Emma has refused each time. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she intentionally excluded me from every aspect of it. Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to invite my sister to my wedding after she tried to sabotage my engagement. I, 28F, have always had a complicated relationship with my younger sister, Lily, 25F. Growing up, she was the type of sibling who craved attention constantly. And while I try to be understanding, it often felt like she saw my successes as opportunities to compete rather than celebrate. Our parents have always been aware of this dynamic, but they tended to brush it off as sibling rivalry, which only made things worse. About a year ago, I got engaged to my partner, Mark 30M. We've been together for 5 years, and our relationship is very stable and supportive. I was thrilled to finally be planning a life with him. I announced the engagement at a family dinner, thinking that Lily might show some excitement, at least for appearances. Instead, she looked visibly upset and said nothing for several minutes before muttering something about how fast everything was happening. I tried to brush it off and not read too much into it. Over the following months, as wedding planning got underway, I noticed a pattern of behavior from Lily that was alarming. First, she started making passive-aggressive comments about the engagement and our plans. She criticized our choice of venue, claiming it was too small for the family, even though it was perfect for us. She commented on Mark's clothing choices, his career, and even subtle things like how I was too busy with wedding planning. Then things escalated. About 6 months ago, Mark and I were reviewing our guest list when I found an email from Lily addressed to one of my friends who wasn't particularly close to her. In it, she wrote things like, "You really shouldn't go to her wedding. I hear she doesn't even like you. Honestly, it's going to be awkward, and I wouldn't bother." She also tried to convince a few other friends to skip the wedding, implying that the engagement was a mistake. I confronted her about this directly, and she acted like she was joking and said, "I was just trying to save you from embarrassment." Mark was furious, but advised me to stay calm. Things took a darker turn when I caught her trying to manipulate my parents. She suggested to them, repeatedly, that I wasn't really ready for marriage, that I should wait and think it through. My parents, who usually support me, seemed conflicted, and it caused a lot of tension. I realized that Lily was deliberately trying to undermine my relationship with Mark and the people around me. Because of all this, I made the difficult decision not to invite Lily to the wedding. I spoke to my parents first, explaining the reasons why, and though they were initially hesitant, they ultimately agreed that protecting my mental health and my relationship with Mark was more important than trying to placate her. I also had a long conversation with Mark, who supported me fully. When I told Lily that she would not be invited, she completely lost it. She called me selfish, accused me of ruining the family, and said that I was overreacting and turning my parents against her. She has since started posting passive-aggressive messages on social media, implying that she's being excluded from something she deserved and that my wedding is going to be awkward without her. My parents are trying to stay neutral, but I can tell they feel guilty. Mark and I are moving forward with our plans, but I keep hearing people in the extended family whispering that I should have tried harder to make peace. I feel like I've done everything I can to prevent her from sabotaging my wedding, but I also feel guilty for officially cutting her out of such an important event in my life. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to invite my sister to my wedding after she actively tried to sabotage my engagement and alienate my friends and family. I'm not looking for revenge or to hurt her, but I feel like boundaries are important and that her presence will be a source of stress and conflict rather than celebration. At the same time, the idea of excluding a sibling from such a milestone feels harsh, and I'm questioning if I overreacted. Has anyone dealt with a manipulative family member like this? And how did you navigate such a situation? I want to celebrate my marriage with people who genuinely support it, but I don't want to be remembered as the sister who cut out family unnecessarily. I'm bracing myself for a lot of backlash from relatives, but I feel like this is one of those moments where my peace and my relationship have to come first. I've tried to be fair and clear in my communication, and I've even offered to have a private dinner with her after the wedding. So it's not about punishing her indefinitely. It's about protecting a very important moment in my life. But still, some part of me keeps wondering if I should have tried harder to accommodate her feelings rather than prioritizing mine so explicitly. So Reddit AITA? AITA for refusing to invite my cousin's kids to my wedding even though it's family. I, 32F, am getting married in about 6 months, and the planning process has been more stressful than I anticipated. My fiancé, Jake, 34M, and I have always been clear that we wanted a small, adult-focused wedding. We agreed early on that the ceremony would be primarily family and close friends, with the reception having a strict no-children policy. The reasoning is simple. Our venue has a limited capacity, the catering is expensive, and we really want the day to feel like an adult celebration. We love children, but we also want this day to feel intimate and manageable. Here's where the tension started. My cousin, Amanda, 36F, has 3 kids, ages 4, 6, and 9. Amanda is single, and she has always been very vocal about how important family gatherings are for her children. She's the type who documents every minor milestone in her life and her kids' lives and expects everyone to be just as enthusiastic. When I sent out the save the date notices, I included a polite note that this would be an adult-only wedding. A few weeks later, Amanda called me in tears, saying that excluding her kids was cruel and that it was not a real family wedding if her children couldn't attend. I tried to explain that the decision wasn't personal and that it was about the logistics and nature of the event, but she wasn't having it. She told me that it was disrespectful to family, and that if I went through with this, it would create a rift in the family. She then brought up her ex-husband's new wife, who has kids, and argued that everyone else brings their kids, so why can't mine come? I told her I understood her point, but that the guest list was finalized and the policy applied to everyone equally, no exceptions. The conflict escalated when my aunt, who is Amanda's mother, called me. She expressed disappointment, saying that my wedding should celebrate family in every sense and that I should think about how this looks to the cousins. She suggested I either change the rule or at least let Amanda's kids attend. I stayed firm, saying that the wedding is a personal choice and that I am trying to respect everyone's comfort and the venue's limitations. Amanda didn't stop there. She started sending subtle digs over social media, posting pictures of her kids at family events with captions like, "Wishing I could celebrate with cousins I love today," and tagging me. It's passive-aggressive, and it's starting to stress me out. My fiancé is frustrated too, because he thinks Amanda is trying to guilt-trip me. He says it's not fair to ask us to rewrite our plans to accommodate children when we were very upfront from the start. The situation came to a head during a recent family barbecue. Amanda confronted me in front of several relatives, asking why her kids couldn't be included. She said, "You're choosing your wedding over your family. Do you even care about us?" I calmly explained again that it's an adult event and that it's nothing personal against her or her kids. My uncle backed me up, saying that weddings are personal choices and that there's no obligation to include children, but Amanda refused to accept this and stormed off. Now, several family members are asking me to make it up to Amanda by including her children or at least throwing them a separate party or activity. I feel like I've compromised enough already. I have offered to host a kid-friendly brunch the weekend after the wedding so that Amanda and her children can celebrate with us without interfering with the adult-focused ceremony, but Amanda hasn't responded positively. She insists that the kids' presence at the main event is non-negotiable. Jake and I are exhausted. We don't want to change our wedding plans or guest list, but we also don't want to create a family feud. At the same time, I feel strongly that our wedding should reflect our preferences and not be dictated by the children of our extended family. I've explained multiple times that no exceptions will be made, but some relatives are starting to pressure me, saying I'm being selfish and that I should learn to compromise for family. I've tried to be empathetic, but it feels like nothing I do is enough. I also feel guilty because Amanda's kids are close to me and I genuinely care about them. But I also know that bending the rules now will set a precedent for all other families, and it will compromise the environment we want for our wedding. So, AITA for refusing to invite my cousin's kids to my wedding, even though some family members think I should compromise. AITA for refusing to host my younger sister's wedding after she completely dismissed my feelings about my house and privacy. I, 32F, live in a modest 2-story house that I bought 3 years ago. It's not huge, but it's comfortable, and I take a lot of pride in how I've set it up. Every detail, from the furniture to the decorations, reflects my personality, and I have always treated it as my sanctuary. I've never had roommates or anything close to a big family gathering in my home because I'm introverted and I like to control my environment. That's not to say I don't enjoy my family. I just prefer visiting them rather than hosting. My younger sister, Lily, 28F, is the exact opposite. She is outgoing, dramatic, and incredibly particular about her social image. She got engaged about a year ago, and from the start, she's been obsessed with planning a fairy tale wedding. When she started discussing venues, she said she had this vision of a small, intimate, homey wedding with family and close friends, which she claimed would be perfect in someone's house. Naturally, I thought she meant she wanted to do it at her parents' house, or maybe rent a small hall, because those seemed like obvious choices. A couple of weeks later, she called me saying, "I want to do it at your place. Your house is perfect. Everyone will be so impressed." I laughed, assuming she was joking, but she was dead serious. I told her no. I tried to explain gently that my house is small, and I value my privacy. I mentioned that I've spent years arranging everything to suit me, and hosting a wedding, even a small one, would require moving furniture, potentially damaging things, and dealing with a crowd I'm not comfortable with. She didn't take it well. She said I was being selfish and choosing comfort over family, which I found extreme, but I tried to reason with her further. I offered alternatives. I suggested her parents' house, local event halls, or even a small Airbnb venue. I even offered to help with the decorations or planning logistics. She refused every suggestion, insisting that it had to be my house. She said that she wanted my home because it's elegant and cozy, and everyone loves visiting your place. She framed it as a compliment, but it felt like manipulation to me because it ignored my clear boundaries. Things escalated when she started pressuring me in front of our family. During a video call, she asked me if I could just make an exception for her special day. And when I said I wasn't comfortable, she rolled her eyes and said, "You always make everything about yourself. This is my wedding, and you're acting like a brat." My parents tried to mediate, but I could tell they were annoyed with me for refusing. They even said things like, "It's just one day. Can't you do this for her?" I tried to explain that it's not about being difficult. It's about respecting my home and mental health, but they didn't seem to understand. Over the next few months, Lily kept escalating. She started sending me links to wedding setups, asking how I could fit 50 people in that space, or asking if I could move some things to storage temporarily. Every message made me feel more stressed. I told her repeatedly that it was not going to happen, but she started hinting that if I didn't host, I was somehow ruining her life or that no one would forgive me for denying this opportunity. It began to feel less like planning and more like emotional blackmail. I finally drew a hard line 2 weeks ago. I told her that under no circumstances would I host her wedding at my house. I explained that it was non-negotiable and that I would help with planning, decorations, and advice, but my house was off limits. She exploded. She accused me of being cruel, controlling, and selfish, and said that I didn't care about family or her happiness. She even called me a hypocrite because I sometimes host small dinner parties or holiday gatherings. I explained that there's a huge difference between inviting a handful of people for dinner and hosting 50-plus people for an entire day, complete with food, music, and chaos. She didn't accept the explanation. The fallout has been rough. Our parents are disappointed in me, and our extended family has started asking questions about why I wouldn't support my sister. Lily refuses to speak to me except in curt texts. I feel hurt because I'm being punished for setting a boundary about my own home, which I worked hard for and which I have a right to protect. I also feel frustrated because she's framing her disappointment as a moral failing on my part, when it's really about respect for personal space and autonomy. I've started doubting myself because the constant criticism from my sister and family is hard to ignore, but logically, I feel justified. Hosting her wedding would cause me enormous stress and potentially ruin my relationship with my house, which I deeply care about. I've tried compromise in every other way, but it seems like no compromise is acceptable except me giving up my home. So, AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding at my house, even though she insists it would be perfect. I feel like I'm being attacked for protecting my space, but maybe I'm being unreasonable for prioritizing my comfort over her big day. AITA for refusing to let my sister stay in my house after she had a major falling out with her partner. This all started about 6 months ago. My sister, Emma, had been dating her boyfriend, Chris, for almost 3 years. I always liked Chris at first, but over time, I began noticing some red flags. He could be controlling and dismissive of Emma's feelings, and I sometimes caught him making subtle jabs at her in front of others. I never said much to Emma because I didn't want to seem judgmental, but I always try to support her if she confided in me. About 6 months ago, Emma called me late one night in tears. She said she had gotten into a huge fight with Chris, and things had escalated to the point where she didn't feel safe staying in their apartment. She sounded desperate and told me she didn't know where else to go. Without hesitating, I told her she could come stay with me. I live in a 2-bedroom apartment in the city, and I had just started redecorating my guest room. I was excited to have her over and thought it would be a temporary arrangement until she figured out her next steps. When Emma arrived, I immediately noticed a shift. She seemed anxious and stressed, but also very tense with me. I didn't think much of it at first because she had been through a rough night. The next morning, however, things began to unravel. Emma insisted on rearranging my living room furniture because she claimed it felt wrong the way I had it. She started leaving her belongings all over my apartment and used my kitchen without asking, leaving a huge mess. I tried to be polite and patient, reminding her gently that this was my home and that I appreciated it if she cleaned up after herself. Emma got defensive and said she was too upset to worry about it right now and that I should be more understanding. A few weeks went by, and things continued to get worse. Emma would call me multiple times a day, sometimes staying up until midnight talking about her fights with Chris. I tried to set boundaries, suggesting we could talk in the evening, but that I needed time to focus on work during the day. She accused me of abandoning her and said I was being cold. I felt trapped. I work long hours, and my apartment was supposed to be my sanctuary. I was slowly starting to resent having her there, but I tried to remind myself that she was family and I wanted to help her. Then came the incident that made me finally realize I had to draw a line. One evening, I came home from work to find that Emma had invited several of her friends over without asking. My apartment was chaotic. There were empty pizza boxes, bottles, and her friends were using my living room as if it was a public hangout space. I was furious. I told her that this was not acceptable and that she needed to respect my home. She yelled at me, saying I had no right to control her or make her feel unwelcome. The argument escalated to the point where she threatened to leave, but then refused to take her things with her. She claimed she couldn't handle living anywhere else and that I had to accommodate her because I was her sister. I tried reasoning with her calmly. I said that I loved her and wanted to help, but I couldn't allow her to treat my apartment like a free hotel. I suggested she look into temporary rentals or stay with other friends while she figured things out. She exploded and accused me of being selfish and cruel, saying that she had nowhere else to go. I reminded her that she had a small apartment she could return to and that her fight with Chris did not mean she had no other options. She said she couldn't face him and that I should choose her over my own comfort. After that night, I made a decision. I told Emma that she could stay for 2 more days while she made arrangements elsewhere. But after that, she had to leave. She got very angry, saying I was abandoning her in a moment of crisis. I tried to explain that helping someone does not mean allowing them to overstep boundaries and disrupt your life. She refused to listen and started crying uncontrollably, calling me heartless and selfish. I reached out to other family members for advice. Most of them were sympathetic and said that I was right to set boundaries, but a few called me cruel and said I was punishing her for needing help. Emma's behavior hasn't changed. She has since stayed with a friend, but she's been sending me long texts accusing me of betrayal and refusing to speak to me in person. I feel terrible because I wanted to help her, but I also feel like I had no choice. My apartment is my personal space, and she was essentially living there without respecting any rules or boundaries. I've been reflecting a lot and wondering if I really am the asshole here. I genuinely try to help her, but the situation became unbearable, and I think I did the right thing by asking her to leave. I wonder if I should have approached it differently, perhaps setting stricter rules from the beginning or offering more guidance on alternative solutions. But at the same time, I feel like anyone would have reached a breaking point if someone stayed in their home for months and treated it like it wasn't theirs. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to let my sister continue staying in my apartment after a breakup and for setting firm boundaries. She's now upset with me and claims I've abandoned her, but I'm not sure I could have handled the situation any other way without sacrificing my own well-being and space. I want to be there for her, but I also need to protect my home and mental health. Has anyone else been in a situation where a family member stayed with them after a crisis and refused to respect boundaries? How did you handle it without completely severing the relationship? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after a decade of tension finally boiled over. I, 34F, have a younger sister, Jenna, 31F, who has always been the golden child in our family. From childhood, it seemed like everything she did was praised, while I was constantly compared to her. It wasn't malicious on our parents' part, more like unintentional favoritism, but growing up, it really affected my self-esteem. I excelled in academics, sports, and later in my career, yet it felt like nothing I accomplished could match what Jenna was doing at any given moment. Fast forward to adulthood. Our relationship has been rocky but manageable. We don't talk daily, but we catch up occasionally. However, over the past 10 years, there have been several incidents that have made me increasingly hesitant to involve myself in her life milestones. For instance, she has a habit of making public events about herself while subtly undermining others, including me. Birthday parties, holidays, and family gatherings always ended up highlighting her achievements and downplaying mine. I try to ignore it, chalk it up to sibling rivalry, but it has worn me down. The tipping point came when she got engaged last year. I was happy for her, genuinely, but she immediately started assuming I would help organize everything, despite never acknowledging my feelings or opinions. She didn't ask, she instructed. She demanded that I take over catering negotiations, decorations, and even coordinate her bridal party, all while implying that if I didn't, I was being unsupportive. When I tried to suggest compromises or voice my concerns about time and cost, she dismissed me, saying, "You'll figure it out because you know I'm right." I ended up doing a lot of the work anyway, because I didn't want to cause a scene with our parents. During this process, she also invited my ex-boyfriend to the wedding. This is someone I had been with for 4 years and who had broken my heart rather badly. I didn't expect her to intentionally hurt me, but when I asked her if she really wanted him there, she said, "Oh, he's been invited. Don't take it personally. You'll get over it." That comment felt cruel and dismissive. I told her I was uncomfortable and that I would probably skip the wedding if he was attending, and she reacted with disbelief, saying I was being dramatic and selfish. Over the next few months, I tried to maintain some distance while still helping where I could without involving myself in the more personal aspects of her planning. Then came the bridal shower. She hosted it at her house and invited family and friends, but she did not include me in the guest list. I wasn't supposed to attend. When I asked her why, she said, "It's a small gathering for my close friends. You know, the people who actually matter." I was shocked and hurt. I confronted her about it, and she laughed it off, saying I was being overly sensitive and that I should just get over it. After that, I realized that attending the wedding would mean walking into an event where I was neither respected nor genuinely wanted. I also knew that if I confronted her about all these issues, she would dismiss them as me being jealous or insecure. I thought long and hard about my options. I tried writing her a letter explaining how her behavior over the years and during the wedding planning had affected me, and that I didn't feel comfortable attending. I was honest but polite, hoping she might understand. Her response was a text message that said, "Wow, I can't believe you do this. I've been nothing but fair to you. If you don't come, don't expect to be in my life anymore." I didn't respond. I consulted with our parents, who were angry with me for refusing to attend, insisting that family comes first and that I was overreacting. My friends were supportive, saying it sounded like I had valid reasons for protecting my emotional health. The wedding day arrived. Jenna's social media was flooded with pictures of everyone smiling and celebrating, with captions about love, family, and forgiveness. I felt a mix of relief and sadness. Relief because I wasn't putting myself in a toxic environment, and sadness because the sister I wanted to have a relationship with seemed impossible to reach. A few weeks later, Jenna called our parents and demanded that they cut off contact with me until I apologized. They refused, but were distant for a while. I haven't spoken to her directly since. I don't take joy in missing her wedding, but I felt it was necessary for my mental well-being. Some family members have labeled me as selfish and unsupportive, while others say I was justified in setting boundaries. I still struggle with guilt sometimes because it feels like I abandoned a sister in one of the most important moments of her life. But the thought of being treated as an afterthought or being deliberately hurt is unbearable. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding given the long history of favoritism, dismissive behavior, and the specific incidents around her engagement and wedding. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé's behavior. This is going to be long, but I'll try to lay it all out as clearly as possible. I, 28F, have always been close to my sister, Emily, 32F. We grew up in a pretty small town, so for most of our lives, it was just the two of us and our parents. I'm the kind of person who tends to avoid drama whenever I can, and Emily has always been more assertive, I guess, maybe even stubborn at times. It's never been a huge issue until recently. About a year ago, Emily got engaged to a man named Ryan, 35M. Ryan comes from a very different background than we do. He's wealthy, from a big city, and has a very high-powered career in finance. I didn't know much about him at first, but Emily seemed genuinely happy, so I tried to keep an open mind. The problem started during the engagement party. Ryan said some things that I found concerning, but at the time I brushed them off as maybe just awkward small talk. For instance, he made a few jokes about how people in small towns were simple or unsophisticated, and he made a comment about me personally, asking if I'd managed to find a real job yet after I mentioned I was working as a freelance graphic designer. I laughed awkwardly, and Emily just smiled and changed the subject. I decided to give him the benefit of the doubt. Over the months, Ryan's behavior became harder to ignore. He often belittled Emily in front of friends and family, sometimes jokingly, sometimes more seriously. For example, when Emily wanted to decorate her engagement photo shoot with a particular theme, he scoffed at her choices and insisted his ideas were better because he had more money and experience. He also frequently made cutting remarks about people he deemed lower status, including my parents, who were hardworking but not wealthy. I tried to overlook it, thinking maybe I was being sensitive or that he was just joking. The real breaking point came last month when Emily asked me to help with the wedding planning. I agreed because I genuinely love my sister and wanted to be involved. But working with Ryan has been exhausting. He micromanages every detail, insults vendors, and refuses to listen to Emily's opinions unless they align exactly with his. At one planning meeting, Emily suggested a simple, intimate ceremony, and Ryan responded by saying, "If we're doing this, it's going to be a spectacle, not a backyard pity party. People need to see we're successful." Emily tried to argue, and he laughed at her, calling her naive and unrealistic. I tried talking to Emily about my concerns privately, but she got defensive. She said that Ryan loves her, that he's just particular, and that I'm overreacting. I told her that it's not just about particular tastes. It's about how he treats her and everyone around him. She didn't want to hear it and asked me to stop being negative. I felt like I couldn't win, so I started limiting my interactions with him. Then came the incident that finally made me say no to attending the wedding. Emily's parents invited me over to help set up a small pre-wedding gathering. Ryan was there, and almost immediately he started criticizing everything I did. He told me I wasn't arranging the flowers properly and suggested I just let the professionals handle it because, in his words, people like me have to make things perfect. When I tried to explain that I had studied floral design in college and had a plan, he interrupted me and laughed, saying, "College? Really? You do realize most people pay for real designers, right?" It was humiliating. Emily didn't intervene. I left early that day, feeling upset and frustrated. That night, Emily called me, asking why I left and saying I was being dramatic. I told her I couldn't stand being around Ryan because of how he treats me and, more importantly, how he treats her and everyone else. I said I didn't feel comfortable being part of a celebration that was being controlled by someone so condescending and toxic. She cried, accused me of trying to sabotage her happiness, and told me that if I didn't attend, she might not invite me to future family events. I tried to explain that this wasn't about control. It was about standing up against someone I genuinely believe is harmful. I also told her that attending her wedding under those conditions would be miserable for me and probably for her as well, because I would likely lash out at Ryan in the heat of the moment. She said I was selfish, that she had worked hard on the wedding and deserved to have her family there, and that I was choosing a hypothetical problem over her actual day. Since then, we've barely spoken. Our parents are upset, saying that families should put aside differences for a day, but they also admitted privately that Ryan's behavior is concerning. Some friends have told me I'm overreacting and should just grin and bear it for Emily's sake, while others say I'm justified in protecting myself from someone who is toxic. I honestly feel torn. Part of me wants to be there for Emily because I love her, but the other part of me cannot reconcile attending an event where someone I see as abusive will be celebrated and elevated. I worry about my relationship with my sister long term, but I also worry about what it would do to me emotionally to be around Ryan for the whole wedding. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé's behavior. I've tried talking to her calmly and privately, but she interprets it as an attack, and I can't pretend that everything is fine when it clearly isn't. I feel like I'm being forced to choose between my own mental health and my relationship with my sister, and I don't know if I'm wrong for drawing the line. AITA for refusing to let my sister move back in after she betrayed my trust. I have always considered myself a patient and supportive sibling. My sister, Clara, is 5 years older than me, and growing up, We had a fairly typical sibling dynamic, occasional fights, but overall a close bond. Clara has always been a bit impulsive and stubborn, but I never thought that would cause a rift significant enough to threaten our relationship. That changed a few months ago, and now our relationship is on shaky ground. A bit of background. I live in a modest two-bedroom apartment in a mid-sized city. I moved here about 3 years ago for work, and while I can afford the rent and bills comfortably, it's not extravagant. Clara, on the other hand, has always had financial issues. She's moved between cities for different jobs, none of which lasted very long, and she's had a history of poor money management. Over the years, I've helped her out financially several times, lending money and even letting her stay with me temporarily when she was between apartments. I thought I was being a supportive sister, and I always try to set boundaries politely, never wanting to strain our relationship. Things started going south when Clara lost her job a few months ago. She called me in a panic, explaining that her landlord had given her an eviction notice and she had nowhere to go. Initially, I felt bad for her and agreed to let her stay with me temporarily while she looked for a new job and apartment. I made it very clear that temporary meant a month or two at most, and that I expected her to contribute to rent and household chores. Clara seemed to understand, although I suspected deep down that she might overstay her welcome. I thought I could handle it. After all, she was family, and I wanted to help. At first, things went fine. Clara helped with groceries and cleaning, and she seemed to be actively searching for jobs. But after about a month, the cracks began to show. She started staying out late without telling me where she was, coming home exhausted or irritable, and leaving messes around the apartment. I tried to address it calmly, reminding her of the house rules we had agreed on, but she brushed it off, saying she was stressed and I was overreacting. I tried to give her the benefit of the doubt, thinking maybe the stress of unemployment was weighing on her. The breaking point came when I discovered that Clara had been using my personal credit card without permission. I keep my card in a drawer in my room because I occasionally lend it to friends or family with my explicit permission. One day, while looking for a receipt, I noticed unfamiliar charges totaling over $800. I confronted her immediately, and after some initial denial, she admitted to using it, claiming she would pay me back once she found a job. I was furious, not just because of the money, but because of the betrayal of trust. This wasn't a misunderstanding or an accident. It was a deliberate choice she made without consulting me. After that incident, I told Clara she needed to find somewhere else to stay immediately. I explained that while I loved her, I could no longer allow her to live with me under these circumstances. She was incredibly defensive and accused me of overreacting and being unsympathetic. She even said I was punishing her for making a mistake, which I found absurd given the severity of what had happened. We argued for hours, and eventually, she stormed out, promising to find another place. The situation seemed to settle for a few weeks, but then Clara started contacting me almost daily, asking if she could move back in. She claimed she had no other options, and that she was genuinely trying to improve her situation. I remained firm, explaining that the breach of trust made it impossible for her to live with me again. I also offered to help her in other ways, connecting her with job leads, helping her draft a resume, or even helping her find a short-term rental that she could afford. Clara refused all of this, insisting that living with me was the only solution and accusing me of being selfish. The tension escalated when our parents got involved. They called me and tried to mediate, arguing that families should support each other and that I was being harsh. I told them about the credit card incident and my concerns about setting a precedent where Clara could disregard boundaries without consequences. My parents were sympathetic, but still urged me to consider letting her back in, arguing that she was in a vulnerable position. I stuck to my guns, feeling increasingly frustrated and guilty at the same time. Now, the situation has spilled over into other areas. Clara has started sending me passive-aggressive texts, hinting that I don't care about her, and that our relationship might be over if I don't help her. Mutual friends have begun asking me why I won't let her back in, which has been awkward. I feel trapped between wanting to protect my home and maintaining family harmony, and I can't help but feel hurt that she betrayed my trust in such a blatant way. At the same time, I'm aware that some people might see me as cold or unsympathetic for refusing to help my sister in her time of need. I've spent hours replaying the situation in my head, wondering if I should just let her move back in temporarily with strict rules. But every time I consider it, I remember the credit card incident and the stress of having someone live in my space who doesn't respect boundaries. I worry that if I give in now, it will only reinforce a pattern where she can rely on me to bail her out, potentially leading to more serious problems in the future. I want to maintain a relationship with Clara, but I also need to protect myself and my home. I've offered alternatives, but she refuses to consider any of them. I feel guilty for prioritizing my boundaries over helping her, but I also feel justified in not wanting to be exploited. My parents think I'm being too harsh, and some friends have hinted that I'm not being family-oriented enough. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister move back in after she betrayed my trust, even though she's currently struggling and claims she has no other options. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after years of family tension. I, 28F, have a complicated relationship with my family, particularly my older sister, Lisa, 32F. Growing up, she was always the golden child while I was the problem child, though I don't think I was that difficult. I struggled with anxiety and depression during my teenage years, which my parents mostly ignored, focusing on Lisa's achievements instead. Because of that, I developed a lot of resentment toward my family, especially Lisa, who often seemed to enjoy rubbing her successes in my face. Over the years, I've mostly avoided direct confrontation, trying to keep the peace, but that avoidance has its limits. Recently, Lisa got engaged and immediately started planning her wedding. She assumed I would be thrilled and participate in every step of the process, but I've always been hesitant about large family gatherings because they make me anxious and trigger old feelings of inadequacy. I voiced my concerns to my parents, saying that I might not attend the wedding or at least might not be comfortable with the traditional bridal party roles. My parents reacted with shock and guilt-tripping, saying it was my sister's big day and I should just put aside my feelings. Lisa, when I finally told her, became visibly upset. She accused me of not supporting her, of being selfish, and of holding grudges. Things escalated when she asked me to be her maid of honor. I told her I wasn't comfortable taking on that role due to our past and my mental health issues. She was extremely hurt and accused me of trying to ruin her wedding. I offered to attend as a guest, but only if I could arrive late and leave early to avoid being overwhelmed. She responded angrily, saying that wasn't acceptable because the wedding is about family unity and that my attendance should be full participation or nothing. After much thought, I decided not to attend at all. I explained to my parents and Lisa that the emotional toll on me would be too high and that I needed to prioritize my mental health. My parents were furious and called me ungrateful and cruel. Lisa posted a message on social media that hinted I was choosing myself over family and implied I was not a good sister. Several extended family members started reaching out to ask why I wasn't attending, and I ended up blocking a few messages just to cope with the stress. Some friends have told me I'm justified because I have legitimate reasons to protect my mental health, but other friends have said I might be overreacting and should at least try to attend. I'm struggling with guilt because I know this will hurt my sister deeply and possibly create a permanent rift in our relationship. On the other hand, I remember all the times in my childhood when my feelings were dismissed or ignored, and I'm worried that attending the wedding will make me feel invisible or worse, resentful, which could affect my behavior in ways I don't want. I also considered attending only the ceremony and skipping the reception, thinking that might be a compromise. I mentioned this idea, but Lisa said it would make her feel like I didn't care and insisted that partial attendance was not an option. I feel trapped because any choice I make seems to result in someone being hurt or upset, and I can't help but notice that my sister seems to have the power to dictate my emotional boundaries in ways I can't control. This situation has left me exhausted and anxious. I've tried explaining my reasons calmly and repeatedly, but it seems to fall on deaf ears. My parents and sister have framed my decision as an attack on the family rather than a personal boundary. I also worry about how my absence might be interpreted by other family members, potentially being seen as proof that I am selfish or difficult, which would only reinforce old family narratives I've been trying to escape. Ultimately, I am choosing to not attend the wedding because I feel like it is the only way I can protect my mental health and maintain my own boundaries. I don't want to completely sever ties with my family, but I also don't think I can force myself into a situation that would leave me feeling traumatized or emotionally depleted. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after years of family tension and mental health struggles. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos also. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.